Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I'm Evan and I'm alcoholic. And I love hugging George. It's great to come back. There's so many familiar faces in this meeting, and I used to be able to make this meeting all the time, and even when it was back in Playa del Rey, before it moved over here to Westchester, and it's great. I wore a tie, you know, for the new people, and they apparently went to another meeting. Man, what a day. I mean, I'm just blown away by my life now. I don't know. I just got to say, if I seem a little spaced, well, it's because I haven't had a drink in 12 years. But also, I was boogie boarding today, man. I don't know if you guys have done that. What a cool thing. You get like a board and you go out in the surf and you just jump on a wave and it like rockets you into the shore. And it's, I mean, I'm 42 years old, but I'll tell you what, that's a high. That gets me out of here. I don't know why. It is the best time. And I started doing it a couple weeks ago. Another friend in the program. That was the thing. I got to do it today with like two of my favorite people in the world. It was the best. It was like we had such a glorious time. And then we saw a fin, you know, and it was like, you know, and the alcoholics went shark, and the other people went dolphin. And it was and we were like, really? We can go back in? How spiritual. And I'm just like, it's so great. I just have so much fun today, you know, in my life. Oh God. Welcome to, is it George from Reno? Welcome, and happy birthday, Pete. And if there are new people here and you didn't identify, if this is new to you, welcome. This is a great place to be. Life gets really good here. My life's gotten really good here, and I owe it to all these people, you know. If I say anything wise or anything that sounds profound, it's just something I've heard from somebody else in the program who had more time and know that I may sound like I wrote it, but I stole it. And I love this meeting. I love since we moved the podium over here. Has it been here a while? Because that was a little daunting to speak at. Last time I spoke here, it was like that big march up, and it was like wow, you felt like I better come up with some stone tablets or something. It was like wow, a proscenium arch, you know. It was like I felt like I should have brought a song, and but it's so much more relaxed here, and I feel pretty comfortable, really. I feel pretty comfortable being here. It's always great to hear George. It's just great to be with you people and hear anything you have to say, you know. But to remember, it was funny. I was at a nightclub the other night, and one of the waitresses came up, and she said, "Oh, you know, it's great to meet you, and I just wanted to say hey, and I want to perform, you know." She wanted to be a comedian. I do stand-up comedy in the clubs, and she said, "I want to be a performer." I said, "Really?" And I said, "Well, good, you know, jump in." And she says, "Well, I do that, and then I'm an alcoholism counselor during the day." And I said, "Well, great." I said, "Great." I said, "How's that going?" She goes, "Well, good, good." I said, "Where do you do that?" And she said, "Out in the valley." And I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, I said, "You're in the program?" She says, yeah, I said, great. I said, how long you got now? And she says, well, about 6 weeks. And I said, really? I said, well, great, welcome back, you know? She said, yeah, I had a bunch of time, and then I get horrible, horrible stage fright, and so I took Ativan because I had to do a show. And now I'm back. And you know, that's who I am. That's who I am. It brought it all, you know, I was talking to my friend Paul, I was saying, you know, it's my nature to want to burn her down, to just want to blast her and kick her ass. I go, what are you, stupid? You know, don't go on stage. If you're that scared, that might be a message from the universe that you might want to do something else, you know? And she was like, but to not do that and go, to be loving and go, okay, you know, we'll hang in and I'll see you again, and hope to see you at meetings. But that's the way I am. I treat my fear, you know. I've always done that with alcohol and with drugs, you know. It kind of broke my heart, you know, but that's who we are, you know. I've been scared my whole life. I've been scared of other people my whole life. You know, I grew up terrified of you. I always wanted to control what you were thinking because I'm not enough. Inside, deep down, inside, I don't deserve to be here. And I'm not sure where it came from. I don't know. I don't think anything my parents did made me alcoholic. I think that, and I don't know that they did anything that caused low self-esteem. I don't know. I've just always been damn scared. And I thought that, I never knew that there was a God that was going to take care of me. I thought, I just better control what you're thinking. And as long as you're happy, things might go okay, you know. Well, when you're in a big crowded room, that's a busy head. You got to dress right for that kind of thing. And, you know, so it was always stress for me to go anywhere, to be out in public at all, to leave, you know, just terror. That's just how I grew up. I grew up in northern Idaho, which, you know, that couldn't have helped a lot. I'm trailer trash. I grew up in this little mining town, and it was just a horrible place. They had a smelter there, and they mined silver, and there was sulfur in the air. Every breath you took, there was sulfur at the back of your throat, and we would drink, as kids, we would drink gallons and gallons of milk, because you couldn't breathe without doing it, you know? And everybody was acting like it was okay, you know? And there were no fish in the river, you know, I mean, they called it the North Fork. We called it Lead Creek. And but I grew up there, and I remember just being terrified, you know. I wasn't big. I couldn't do sports. I didn't have anything, you know. I didn't have no identity. I couldn't get it going with a girlfriend, really. I tried with Nancy Waltman in the 7th grade, you know. I took her to a dance, and it was swinging, and we didn't dance or anything, you know. I had sweaty palms, and I walked her home, a small town, like 2 blocks. I lived like 2 blocks from her, and I walked her to her house. And I said, thank you so much for the dance. And I leaned over and kissed her right on the mouth. I grabbed her shoulders and kissed her, and she screamed at like the top of her lungs. And I was like, oh my God, they heard that everywhere, you know. But, you know, it was evidence. You know, I gathered that as evidence that I'm a terrifying guy, and they scream when you kiss them, you know. And I don't deserve that kind of love or anything. So don't start, man. Don't even bother. And I think it was like a couple days later, or a week later, I started smoking Marlboros, you know, because he didn't need a girlfriend. The Marlboro guy, he had a horse, and you know, he just sort of ride around the range, and you look tough, you know. And I sort of became an outlaw then. I thought, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll be an outlaw, man. You don't need a girl. And I remember I started hanging with Terry Patano, and we'd go drinking, and we'd sneak out of the house and drink, and always to blackout. Always to blackout. I've always drank to blackout. I love blacking out, you know. I'm at the party, I don't have to chat, you know. And my yearbook, I went back and looked at my yearbook at my mom's houses. This is amazing. I looked at my high school yearbook, and a lot of things usually say, oh, never change, you're great, what a fun guy. Mine say like, hey, I remember you in Terry's trunk. That's all, I remember you in the tub at Susan's, And I'm like, embarrassed, I can't show that to my folks. You can't, it's not like, good luck in your chosen profession. I love blacking out, though. I've always loved blacking out. I knew that I always drank to black out. Whenever I started drinking, I wanted to get to black out. And got to go to college which isn't much in Idaho. It doesn't take a lot to get in, but I think you needed a truck. And we had a truck. And I want to talk about what recovery's been like. How late can I go? To like 10? Because I got a ton of stuff. Does it go to like 5 till? Like 5 till, and then we I went to college, and I didn't know what was going there. I was more terrified there because all of a sudden, instead of a town of 5,000, it was a campus with 16,000 kids, and they all knew what they wanted to do, apparently, and I had no clue. And man, I found that there was another guy in the dorm, and we just partied. I started doing drugs heavily because you had them, and they were the worst because you couldn't black out, really, I did black out on hash. I got to where I could do that, but I couldn't really. Chemicals, you're up. And that's the worst. If you're terrified, you're just awake. And for like 8 hours, I did college. I knew I'd been raised by my dad. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know who my mother was. My dad had kidnapped me when I was a kid, I guess, because I guess she wouldn't take care of me. And he'd sort of taken me into marriages. And so I had no heritage, or there was no family business, or there was no, Dad never really hung on to one job. He would just come home one day and go, that son of a bitch, and you knew he was out of work. And that was kind of, and then we moved. We wound up in Idaho, and I had no clue what I wanted to do, I had and they said, well, you got to choose. And I went to the career counseling place, and they said, what are you good at? And I said, well, I'm a pretty good liar, really. I got a good line of bullshit, and I knew I did, and they said, well, try the theater department and look into acting. And so I did, and that was great, studying theater at an agricultural school in the middle of Idaho. You get a lot of stage time, and I was in every play. I'm like the only major, And I didn't know why, but I loved doing it in the theater. So that's how I wound up doing that. I wound up acting, and I got out of college, and of course I hated the people in the theater. I hated working with other people. I loved how they partied. I drank all through college and got out, and I knew I better do a one-man show, because they don't know what's going on. And started doing the comedy in the nightclubs in Seattle and San Francisco. I moved down to San Francisco, which is... and started working in the nightclubs. They'd pay you in drinks, and started hitting the road a bit. And man, I couldn't meet girls still, really. I had to sort of trick girls, because I knew I didn't want them screaming again. And so I would sort of, do my pose with the cigarette, and I'm a tortured bohemian artist. I'm a poet, and they would go, "Oh, you poor thing," and I'd go, "Is there room to live at your place?" And that was how I tell the story about Bradley's. Bradley's bar at Carl and Cole in San Francisco was the best bar. It was my bar. During the day, it was all the daily drinkers. We'd all be in there, and it was a commuter bar. It was on the Anjuta line, and everybody'd come in there. It was like they had everything but bait for sale, and it was just a funky bar. And I'd go in there, and Brian would pour me double vodkas, and man, I'd drink all day, and then at night, the commuters wouldn't come, but all the gay men would come in. And I would still be there and drinking with Brian and the guys, and they'd say, well, are you gay? I'd say, well, I don't think so, you know? And they would say, well, okay. And then every once in a while, a woman would straggle in late from work, and they would just go, he's down there, you know? And it was like, I mean, I swear, you'd see a woman come in, you'd just pose, you know? You'd hit the pose, and I'd move in, and that's how I loved Bradley's. Bradley was the best bar. Brian, I didn't throw stuff. God, saltwater. I'm so scared too. Saltwater is just going to come shooting out of my head. I don't know if you've done that. When you swim in the ocean, it's like I got tumbled by a few waves, and it's like every once in a while saltwater would just start drooling down out of some hole in your head. There's just salt water, and you're like, and I'm like, okay. So I look like a drooling, slobbering drunk. He's loaded, you know. I don't want. Bradley's was the best bar in the world. That was my bar. I drink there. Brian worked there. Brian bottomed out on alcoholism a year before I did. This is my favorite bartender. He lived like 2 doors up, and he had marble stairs up to his Victorian apartment. Brian, at his bottom, he had a cast on this arm all the way up here. He had a cast on this arm all the way up here, and a full cast from the pelvis all the way down his leg, and was pouring drinks at Bradley's. And every one of the injuries was from his own front step. 2 blocks from work. It's like what kind? You talk about your bottom coming to you, you know? You could have hired a guy to just beat him up in bed, you know? You done drinking yet? You know? He's the sweetest guy. And Brian, 12, you know, he would come to the bar and he'd sort of mention, no, I'm not drinking now, you know, and he poured drinks for a little bit and then started his own business, taking care of dogs and walking dogs and stuff. He's doing very well today. But it took me, you know, I knew I was alcoholic then. I had drank one woman out of the house, you know, we'd been living together 2 years, and she'd said, you know, if you keep drinking, I got to move. And I said, well, I'll help you find a place, you know. I'm a good guy. And I did. And then I had to find another one in the bar, and I found Alicia, and that was 2 years. And then even she got sick of detoxing me and treatment. She just got sick of it. I knew I was alcoholic. My family, you know, my dad had said to me, don't come home anymore. We don't want to see you. This is my dad. He said, don't come home unless you're 6 months sober. My stepsister, who I was very close to, had left the room crying because I was just drunk all the time. They didn't want to see me. You know, I was unemployable. I'd burnt a lot of bridges. They'd flown me into clubs in different places, Denver, Fairbanks, and I couldn't talk. And man, does that annoy people, you know. Other comics would have to do the shows, and I'd just give them my money, you know, and then I'd go drink. I mean, I was worthless. Embarrassed, humiliated. I've fallen off stage and had to get 7 stitches in my mouth, drunk. I've been in blackout on national television. You know, I humiliated myself really badly, and they didn't know it. Too bad. I don't know. It got real dark. Nobody was laughing anymore. It wasn't funny. There was nothing funny. There were no jokes. I wasn't coming up with jokes, you know. And she was done. She was like, "You're out of here," you know. And she dropped me off at the last detox. She said, "This is it." And at Lincoln House in San Rafael. It was up in San Rafael, California, up by Tiburon, north of Tiburon. And she tried to detox me with Xanax, so there was some medical thing, and I was still blacked out when I checked in, and a little residential detox. And I'd been to AA meetings and then run back to the bar going, you know, I thought you guys were just Mormons, man. I didn't get it. I was like, you are way too happy. What the hell you got to be so damn happy about? You're not drinking. Get bummed, for crying out loud. I could not grasp, I just could not grasp that drinking had anything to do with my alcoholism. I could not connect having a cocktail with being a problem in my life, you know? So I go into this detox, I come to in the detox, and I know this is it. And there's nowhere to go. And I want to kill myself, because she ain't going to take me back. The family don't want me, they ain't sending any more troops, there's nothing. And I wanted to kill myself. All I had were fingernail clippers, and I knew that was going to be tedious. And it's not something I wanted to take time with. And I truly wanted to die or drink again. That's all I wanted. I went down. I remember asking God, if there is a God, okay, maybe everything I know might be wrong. And if there is a God, give me some kind of sign to nod off myself, that this might get better, because I didn't see any light at the end of any tunnel. And I'm like, if there ain't something happening, I'm not going to hang with this not drinking very long. And I went downstairs and needed tea and honey because the shakes were starting, and that's all they had. And it was like, I knew the cramps, and I just knew the honey was the only thing that was going to keep me from coming apart. And sat down in the kitchen. There were a few homeless guys there, and they'd made spaghetti or something. And you could see in the front porch of this little house where people checked in the office. And there was a guy checking in, and everybody, that's always kind of big news, you know, everybody's like, huh. And the guy had on a three-piece suit. He was a tall guy, his hair looked good, he looked great, and he was checking in. And he came, walked right into the kitchen and sat down, and the other guys just sort of like, and walked off. And I just was sitting there, and he started talking. This guy just sat right down, and he said, how's it going? And I said, it's not going good. I go, how's it going with you? And he said, not good. And he said that he'd bought his 7 or 8-year-old son. He'd been sober in AA 7 or 8 years. He'd bought his 7 or 8-year-old son a bicycle for his birthday. And the kid had been hit and killed on that bike like the next day. And he'd gone to the bar and had a drink. And he said he put the glass down and he came back to Lincoln House, which was the last place he got sober. And I was like, couldn't believe what had happened, the pain about his child. And he said, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And he was like being really clear. I mean, he wasn't babbling it out. This guy was deadly serious. He said, this is the hardest thing I've ever done, putting that glass down and coming here. And he said he'd done a lot of hard things. He said he'd been in special forces in Vietnam. He'd gone in. His job was to get POWs out. He said that had been a hard job. He said, but this, putting that glass down, was the hardest thing he'd ever done in his life. And we just sat there. But I heard that. It was one guy talking to me. It was an alcoholic talking to another alcoholic, sharing his experience with me that saved my life. Because this guy was a world-class hero, and this guy was the toughest guy I'd probably ever seen, and he was throwing up his arms going, this is the toughest thing. And I was like, if it's kicking his ass, maybe everything I know for sure is wrong. And I never saw that guy again. It was 2 days later, a couple friends from the Haight, Charlie and Austin, these big guys came and got me. They had they had a little Volkswagen Bug, and they were huge guys, and they jammed me in the back and started driving back across the Golden Gate Bridge, with the sunroof open and laughing, and the radio screaming loud, and the wind's flapping in, and I'm like, boo, where are we going? And they go to a meeting, and I'm like, oh, it's a little soon, isn't it? And I'd really like to nap, but they took me to a meeting, man. They whisked me off to meetings, and these guys just sort of corralled me around and rodeoed me into meetings. It was the best thing that could have happened to me, I had to move out of her place. I had to move onto my Austin's floor. He became my first sponsor, and I lived on his floor. It was the first week out of that detox. I got a call. My father was diagnosed with cancer and given 6 months to live. And I knew I had to work this program if I'm going to go back and see him. He was a Marine. I knew that when he said 6 months, I got to get it together. And that really helped keep me with you guys. I clung to you guys, I was scared. Those first days, I was so scared, man. Being new in this is just so terrifying, and I'm sure everything's just going to come down around me, and I'm not going to be taken care of. What if there is no God? Okay, I'm stupid, I know nothing, but what if it doesn't happen for me, And coming to you guys, and I'm like, okay, I'm in the meeting. Who's the coolest person here? I wanted to dress AA, how do you look good in AA? And I don't know the AA look, and I asked Austin, I go, who's the most important person here? And he said, the person with the least time. And I said, that's okay. I go, who's the coolest person here? He said, the person that is the first to put their hand out to the person with the least amount of time. And it was like those things started, and I'm like, well, what do you wear? But those things started sinking in, all those lessons from somebody who had more time, to go to a meeting, to have my favorite bartender take me to a meeting, and my first big laugh at AA was I could not believe I was laughing that hard. We went to a meeting in the Mission District, a noon meeting, huge meeting. Brian gets up right near the end of the meeting, gets a cup of coffee. He's got like this full cup of coffee, and everybody's getting ready. They're wrapping it up, and he sits down next to me, and somebody said, so lead us in the Lord's Prayer. Everybody stands up. Brian stands up, spills his coffee. Everybody grabs hands. He goes, God damn it. Everybody goes, Our Father. And I just started I thought my head was just going to blow off my head. I was laughing so hard. It was like, I don't know how I got through that prayer. It was like, and it was okay, because it was you guys. It's okay to just have your head leave your body. And I think I realized just how healing the laughter was, when I came to the meetings and I got to laugh with you guys. And, this is, that's what happened to me, and I've clung to you guys, and there have been times I haven't. What's happened in this program for me is I get into what I want. As soon as I got sober, I decided, well, who's my higher power? My higher power is probably into what I want, and wants me to have a good car, wants me to look right and have a lot of girlfriends, and it was. I got away from you guys. I moved. Austin, my sponsor, moved to Arizona, so I moved down here and didn't get a new sponsor and wasn't hitting meetings right away. And I quit working the steps and fell away a little, and I got real tense. I was really into working a lot and getting a lot of money and buying a lot of things that looked right, and then I had to trick her and look good for her, and then I was having, I had all these bills, and I'd made all my financial amends except for the IRS, because they know where to find me, and they aren't going anywhere. And I was shopping and working and getting tenser and tenser, and God, I was in that quake in San Francisco. I was in a hotel working at a club, and I woke up in this quake, and I married the next woman who called. You look good in the car, let's go. And I tricked her, I had to get her down here from Canada and talked her into doing it. And you know what? The honeymoon lasted about 2 months, and it got really scary. And I swear it was she had a knife, and I was holding up a white sofa. And I said, I got to get back to meetings, I'm going to get a sponsor. I'm going to work the steps again, because this never happened, And I did. I came back to you guys, and you were there again. And a sponsor showed up, And I made amends to her, and I moved her back, I had to say, look, I don't know how to love you. I don't have the chops. I don't know what love is. She didn't know what love is. I thought love was looking good in my car with the right song as we drove down PCH. And it turns out love has nothing to do with that, really. What I learned is me loving you is me putting my wants aside altogether and letting them go and asking myself what I can do to improve your life right now. That's love. I didn't know that before then. You guys taught me that. So many miracles have happened in this program for me. I got to go home at 6 months sober too. I got to go home and give my dad my 6-month chip. He waited. He died like 3 days after that. And he said, he saw it in my eyes. He saw I was working. I was back there doing amends, doing the thing, and showing up and hitting meetings there. And he said, what you're doing is princely to the whole family. I mean, this was my guy. This was the guy. That was a gift from you guys. I got my whole family back. I found a brother. There was a brother in Utah. I'd never seen my birth certificate. A brother in Utah had called, and it turned out he had my birth certificate and baby pictures, and it was my mother's son by her first marriage. He had all that stuff. He had a letter she had written in the Utah State Mental Institution. She didn't get AA. She was alcoholic. She developed epilepsy. She died of complications in and out of that mental hospital, this disease. But I got to find Jerry, I got to find a half-brother. And then I got to find out the story and what happened. And Jerry, that brother, he has 3 boys. And one of them, the youngest one, is named Chris. And he's a lot like his uncle. And Chris just hit 6 months in Narcotics Anonymous. And man, he's like, my uncle's an AA. He's like, God, I can't tell you how that feels to have had maybe a little something to do with hanging with Chris. And I found another brother I looked who I hadn't seen. It was my dad's other son. I hadn't seen him in 27 years. I found Chuck. He lives in North Hollywood. This guy's just like me. This is my big brother. He never had a dad. I didn't have a mom. He had his mom. And I've met her. And we're like, Sunday I went up and celebrated her 70th birthday with he and my niece Rachel. And I've got family, and they love me. I love them. My life is so rich. And I got to hang with them, have a little barbecue with all the kids, and then I ran over, got to go to a meeting over in Malibu. That's a great day. I had a great day. I've gotten so many miracles from you guys, working these steps. I have so much love in my life today. What happened to my sponsor, I wound up moving on to a sailboat because I needed to save money and pay the IRS. That was the problem, Yeah, the IRS was coming down on me pretty hard. I was after the marriage thing, and my sponsor said, well, it's their money, and perhaps you're living a little beyond your means. So I saw a sailboat. It was Jan Moran said, there's a sailboat for sale. You could move onto the boat and save some money. I'm like, Jan, I can't live on a boat. She goes, it's for sale, right? Did Frank talk to that? I was like, maybe I could live on the boat. How much? And I did. I moved onto it, and I'd never sailed or anything. And because really, how hard could it be? And you got to get the boat fixed up. You can't just live on a boat. If you just live on a boat and you don't sail it, you're just a homeless guy on a boat, which they call you derelict, And so I started working on the boat and looking into boats and fixing it up, and I got it saleable and safe. And figure, well, take it out. You just take it out. People say, well, what about lessons? I go, it's lessons, you know. I'll just take it out, you know. Well, I'm living on it. I've been living on it a year, and I just got out on the marina and just upped the sails. And, you know, the wind came between the building, and the whole thing just heeled over like that. And I can't tell you the rush in my heart. It was like, oh, God, we're going down. Because they don't describe that in the book, that sensation that, I think, okay, we're going all the way around, just cling on to something, and oh God, and it got way over like that, and I'm like, and I'm like, let something go, and I like let go of a line, and the sail went out like that, and the boat came back up, and then it moved forward a bit, and I was like, that's how you do it right there. Yeah, God, you guys see that? Yeah. And that's how I learned to sail. And, there's no greater teacher than terror. But it has been such a blessing for me. That damn boat, I would have never found sailing. What I realized when that boat came back up, it was the attitude of the sails, is what they call it in the books. The idea that if I adjust my attitude, I move forward. I have no control over the tide, over the waves, over the winds, but I have control over my attitude. And sailing has become this spiritual exercise for me. And it's not a great boat. I'm not racing. I'm not anything. It's a spiritual thing for me to be out there. And I got into it. And, I paid off the IRS in December. And, I thought I'd get a thank you, but it probably got lost in the mail, I paid off the IRS, man. I thought I would never do that. I thought I'd have to change my identity, But this summer, a friend of mine bought this guy. He's just annoying. He's not an AA. He's just an obsessive computer guy who bought, worked for 20 years and bought himself a racing boat, a Beneteau, and raced his sailboat he was going to race from San Francisco to Hawaii in the Pacific Cup. And I was like, man, that guy's got it made, brand new Beneteau, a 36. Yeah, wow, that's very cool. He goes, well, why don't you come help me crew it back? I'm like, me? The guy, I'm like, and he says, yeah. And I says, well, I don't know that much. I haven't raced or anything. He said, no, you'll be fine. I said, really? Yeah. And so he said, we'll pay all expenses. He flew me to Hawaii, and there were 4 other people. I sailed this guy. I helped him deliver a boat. I spent 19 days. July 15th, we left Hawaii. I sailed for 19 days across the Pacific Ocean with 4 other people I didn't really know who weren't in the program. And that people said, aren't you scared of sharks? I'm like, no, I'm scared of the other people on board, man. I mean, I'm an alcoholic. What if somebody goes wiggy, That's my big fear, What if they all start slamming shooters, It was great. It was my spiritual retreat. I approached it as a spiritual retreat because sailing is a spiritual thing for me. And this guy knows what he's doing, He has all the bells and whistles. He did good in the race, and he was excited. He said it'll be fun. And he had two cousins coming with us. These young girls who had been in the Junior Olympics sailing. They used to sail on Monterey Bay as kids, all grown up. They knew more about sailing than any of us guys on the boat. There were 3 guys, and we'd be down below in the nest. The girls are at the helm chewing gum, talking about boys giggling, shooting this boat off of like 9-foot waves. The 3 men, we're down below eating power bars going, wow, hope it calms down a little. But I tell you, I got on that boat, and it's always been a spiritual thing. Sailing's always been a spiritual thing, and I knew it would be a big deal. I got on that boat, and of course, I had taken Dramamine and also had the nicotine patch, which they don't tell you over the counter causes mild hallucinations. After that, I was like, gah, I'm like, I tore it off, but I was sick for like the first 8 hours, and then you're laying there, and I opened my eyes, and the stars had come out, and from horizon to horizon, I don't know if you've been out on the ocean. If you had, God bless you. It is busy. It is lights. It is solid lights, the entire sky, and there's like a shooting star every 15 or 20 seconds. And I am just like, whoa. It's like seeing my concept. I mean, I've always, my higher power, he's this mad bearded guy just slinging experiments into space. And he's laughing. He's like, ha, that didn't work, ha, you know, and sling. And I was like, he is rocking now. It was like such a spiritual thing for me to be out there and to do night watches, you know, to be on the helm alone, to, you know, bringing that boat across was just incredible. Every sunset, my mouth just hung open. Every sunrise, you just like, oh my God. It was just, and we were all just, it was just breathtaking, the whole trip. And 19 days, you know, you come back. I came back and it was like, I couldn't really work for like 3 weeks. I retreated a little too far spiritually. People are like, well, going back to work. And it's like, oh no, I don't believe I'll work again. People are, are you crazy? That's what you do. I go, oh, not anymore, you know. I saw the stars. People are like, wake up, you know. And it took me like 3 weeks to get back to work and realize, you know what, I have a great life. And I have such an appreciation for people, you know, to come back. I just love people. There was something about being out in nature. I'm sure it happens in the desert or in whatever your spiritual thing is, but being out in nature, just being on that ocean rocked me. I've got a great life. I'm so grateful. I got real fear when I got back. I had this real fear of like, my life isn't the way it's supposed to be. And then it struck me, you know what? My life is exactly the way it's supposed to be. I'm getting what I need in total abundance. What I want is just pissing me off every damn day because I'm not getting it. I wake up, I want, how come I didn't get, why isn't that? And it's like, the more you want, the more I want, the more pain I'm in. If I just stay and appreciate what I have and love you, what can I do for you? I have the best days in the world, you know, and I learned all that from you guys. I have, you know, I love this life, and I feel so grateful, you know. I mean, I get cocky too. I get spiritually cocky, you know. It's so funny. I go to my men's group. I went into McDonald's, the drive-thru once, and bought a crispy chicken at the drive-thru window, and she gave me 2 crispy chickens. And I tell this story to illustrate. I ordered 1 crispy chicken. She put 2 in the bag, and I didn't say anything at the drive-up window. I just drove off. I said, it's a happy meal. I got 2 crispy chickens. And I drove off. And I went home and I scarfed down the crispy chickens, and I started feeling sick, you know. And I thought, you know, maybe this is karma. You know, maybe it's not thou shalt not steal, you can't steal. And I went to my men's group, you know, and I went to the guys and I said, guys, what about this thing? And they said, you know, it sounds like, you know, you really set yourself up there and you can't steal. And we talked about theft, and we talked about the crispy chicken thing, and we decided the best thing to do was to go back and pay for it. So it was 2 days later, I went back and I drove to the drive-up window, and I went to the window, I ordered a crispy chicken, and she gave me 1 in a bag, and I looked at it, and I said, how much is a crispy chicken by itself? And the woman said, would you like another one? I said, no, it's just, the other day I ordered a crispy chicken, and you gave me 2, and I drove off and didn't say anything, and I'd like to pay for that crispy chicken. And she said, that was a special we were having. Thanks, though, for coming in. And I realized I just can't take myself too seriously. I need you guys really bad, and thank God I have you. And thank you so much for showing me to a higher power and really saving my life. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.